You know, I set out to do a pretty old story, and that is, why are those road contracts always so late and so over budget? Because they always are. You know, the big state road contracts, they tend to be millions of dollars over budget, and in some cases many years late. And that's not a terribly new story, but we wanted to do that story. I wanted to do it. It started as a bit of a fishing expedition. I went to Tallahassee and I requested 5 years of major road contracts. And I just sat there looking through files for a couple of days, and the key was that every single person I met in the DOT building, I'd say, here's my card, I'm working on this story. Here's my card, here's my card, here's my card, I'm working on this story. Because nobody wants to talk to you there at the DOT. These things often come out later. You get the phone call a couple of days later. And in my case, I got the letter, and this was just one of the best days of my career for sure. I go to the mailbox and there is a letter to me written in like 5-year-old scrawl, you know, like children's handwriting, Cynthia Barnett, reporter, and I open it up, and again in child's handwriting it said something like, Miss Cynthia, I hear you're working on a story about road contracts. You need to look at the file from the widening of State Road 96 in Pensacola from back in 1996 or whatever year it was. It was a very specific admonition to request a specific file at the DOT. And they said, and when you look in that file, you'll be looking for a very small piece of paper. So this is like really exciting stuff for a DOT story, right? It was 3 big banker's boxes full of files, and so I'm looking for a small piece of paper, and I found a small piece of paper, and that was what led to this story called Road Racket. Here is the small piece of paper that I found. It says telephone conference with Joey Anderson, Jay Rogers, H.E. Prescott, and myself, and the 3 gentlemen are all DOT officials. And Anderson, of course, is negotiating on behalf of Anderson Columbia, which is one of Florida's largest road builders. I had offered $1.5 million. Joey wanted $3.4 million. Jimmy offered $2 million. Joey lowered to $2.9 million. Edward settled at $2.4 million if Joey would send in backup documentation. Joey agreed. Here's what had happened. It turned out that Anderson Columbia had low bid this contract. And after the road was built, it came back to the DOT and said, hey, we need much more money than what we thought this project would cost. And if you don't give it to us, we're going to sue you. This is what are known as settlement claims. They're fairly common in road building projects, but they're usually nickel and dime stuff. It turns out this is standard operating procedure for Florida's major road builders. At that point, I step back and request 5 years worth of settlement claims on DOT road projects. There were hundreds of them. I went back and spent many more days and weeks in Tallahassee, now going through all the settlement claims, weeding out only the really big ones, over $1 million or so, and they went on, and it wasn't just Anderson Columbia, it was all Florida's major road builders just doing this as the course of doing business with the Florida Department of Transportation. A company was indicted for some of this behavior. It was called White Construction. I think it helped put that company out of business. White Construction wasn't the worst offender. Anderson Columbia had 14 lawsuits pending when I did this story. White Construction 10, Asphalt Pavers 3, Florida Rock 3, Meisner Construction 3. I think the DOT and the prosecutors needed to show they were doing something about this, and they, got one company, but again, here was another company with a great deal of political influence in Florida, which, as far as I know, got away with this and continues to get away with it, and that's the frustrating thing. I've always used Florida records, and because I was educated here at the journalism school and started my career in Florida, it was very natural to me to look at public records. I mean, even from my first days as a reporter in the Stark Bureau covering rural sheriff's departments, every morning I went and looked at the records. I think we're very lucky to be in Florida, in a state with such a rich history of public records. I think we're really lucky to be here. I can say that having tried it in other places. I could have never done this story without public records, and I can say that for many stories I've done, including a recent one. Yes, I got a great tip on this story, but that person wasn't willing to tell me exactly what was going on. That person wasn't willing to use their name. They were so afraid of being found out that they either faked a child's handwriting or really did have their child write me that note. So obviously they weren't going to call me. They pointed me to a public record, and that was really crucial.